You're listening to the Paranormal Chronicles radio show. Here is your host, paranormal researcher and author of the best-selling A Most Haunted House, Gavin Lee Davis.
Welcome, my name is G L Davies, founder of ParanormalChronicles.com and author of Haunted, Horror of Haverfordwest. The book critics are calling one of the most terrifying paranormal accounts ever written. Dare you read Haunted, Horror of Haverfordwest alone in bed at night? A happy new year to you all, and please, before we begin, may I give you some advance notice that this show deals with some very upsetting and harrowing events, and as remarkable as this interview is, listener discretion is advised. Just a quick shout out regarding our last episode. We love you, Kevin, Malik and Jenny. We are thinking of you and Kevin's family at this time. Be at peace, brother. The Paranormal Chronicles podcast is brought to you by sixth-books.com. That's six-books.com. And sixth-books offers you a wealth of paranormal reading with books on poltergeists, the orb phenomena, hauntings, UFOs, and so much more. So visit www.sixth-books.com and explore the unknown. If this is your first time listening, then press follow now, as every month all of our followers are put into a monthly prize draw where one lucky follower can win a paranormal book from sixth-books.com. Plus, every quarter, one lucky follower will win a £25 or $1 gift voucher. We appreciate you listening and following, so we always put free goodies up for grabs. Press follow now. Explore and download the incredible series archive, Oh My, Bigfoot accounts, eyewitness reports, on-location investigations, the very best authors, researchers and investigators right here on the Paranormal Chronicles podcast. We grew so quickly with continual praise in our first year as we truly offer you the best in paranormal content. We do this for you. If you have a story, experience or theory to share, then find us and contact us on Instagram and Facebook as The Paranormal Chronicles, tweet at Parachron, or email paranormalchronicles@aol.com. On tonight's show. What happens when a baby dies, and how can they communicate with us from the afterlife? The truth inside from www.o-books.com is the true story from Ali Norell. In July 2014, Ali's daughter, Romy, died just 4 months old. As a spirit medium, Ali found her belief system to be challenged in the strongest way possible. Ali received communication from her daughter from the spirit world in a variety of ways, and this eventually helped her process her grief and uncover her own life purpose. This is an interview that deals with paranormal encounters, mediumship, premonitions, loss, heartbreak, grief, love, and this is one woman's determination to keep going, to be strong, to offer hope to every single person on the planet. This is unlike anything you've ever heard before, to the extent that during this interview, I too became overwhelmed with emotion. Ali Norell is an incredible woman. On with the show. So Ali, your book is poignant as it tells the story of the passing the spirit of your baby daughter, Romy, and the experiences you had after her death. However, what is interesting is that you describe yourself as a spiritual medium and ask yourself some pretty fundamental questions in the book. You describe how you lost your belief in all things spiritual and how you came to regain it through the experiences you had with your daughter, which was corroborated by other mediums. Can you explain a bit more about this, please?
Yes. So I had read a lot of books in this genre, in sort of the mind, body, spirit genre. In the course of my life, I've always had an interest in the spiritual, the paranormal. It's been a big part of my upbringing, as I write about in The Truth Inside. So something that I was very clear about, aside from wanting to write this book as a memorial, if you like, to Romy, that's something that I promised her I would do. And so I really wanted to fulfill that promise. But the other thing that I was very clear about in my own mind was that with the utmost respect to other books in that genre that I've mentioned, I didn't want to make it a sort of a forceful point of view. I didn't want to be giving the message to people that, hey, everyone, this is what I experienced. So you've all got to literally see the light. Anyone who says the afterlife doesn't exist doesn't know what they're talking about. I wanted to be very open with my views. And I wanted really The Truth Inside to be a description of some of the experiences that I'd had myself that have been real to me. Although I'm very honest about the fact, there could be a number of reasons why those things happened to me. I may have hallucinated. I may have been grief-stricken. I'm not a liar, so I can categorically say I didn't make any of them up, but I accept there could be other explanations other than my daughter was contacting me from the spirit realm. I wanted to be very open. I wanted to invite open discussion. I'm interested in anybody who's had similar experiences, and I'm also interested in people who find it hard to accept this set of circumstances and why, and I'm happy to have that conversation with people. And I think what probably gave me, I want to say an edge, that might not be the right terminology. I have, from a young age, I've always seen and heard things that I realized that the older I got, other people didn't necessarily see and hear. And by that, I mean, it's not like I was the kid in The Sixth Sense. It wasn't that pronounced. But, there were various experiences that as I grew older and started to discuss them maybe with friends or my parents who were always very open, I started to realize, and I read more and more books about it, about the paranormal and the spirit world. And I thought, okay, well, I actually feel like I'm having some of these experiences, and odd coincidences and things would happen to me. And when I started to put them all together, in the earlier part of my life, before I'd even had children, I began to recognize that I had some kind of an ability. And so I think when I wrote the book, it was very important to me to recount those experiences and to be very upfront about the fact that this is an ability that I believe I have, but not to make that, not to bias the experiences that I had after Romy's passing. And I think what possibly gives the book an interesting angle is that not only did I have those experiences myself in my own home, but I then sought out the opinion of a variety of different mediums, one of whom is known to me and is a friend of me and does know me, many others who weren't. And I was getting lots of information, sometimes that, was actually corroborating what had happened to me. Complete strangers describing themselves as spiritual mediums were giving me information about something that had recently happened to me concerning my daughter, my daughter who'd passed, that they couldn't possibly have known. And so that was very interesting to me, the fact that I think, I thought I had this ability, and now somebody else with this ability is telling me something very random that I don't think they could possibly have known. So I thought that was really an extra interesting piece of information to give to readers.
When were you first aware of your ability to sense spirit, and how does this manifest in you? So what do you see, hear, sense?
Okay, well, I would probably say, we were discussing in another conversation about imaginary friends. I did have an imaginary friend as a child, so I might recount that possibly as my first experience. But I think the one that really sticks in my mind the most, I do write about in The Truth Inside, and that was at the age of about 13 or 14. I saw my grandfather in my bedroom. He died when I was about 4 years old. We were, despite my young age when he passed, we were very close. We had a very close relationship. I adored him, he adored me. And I was going through a tricky time for 14-year-olds in that my dad had got a job promotion and we were just about to move house. So I'd grown up in Kent. I had really close friends there who I'm happy to say are still my best friends. We've stayed in touch all those years. But and my dad's job meant that we had to move up to Bedfordshire. So we'd have to go and I'd have to move house, start a school. I didn't know anyone. It was really upsetting and stressful at that point because I was very happy where I was. And my poor parents, realised that this was upsetting them and they were trying everything. They almost didn't go through with it because they thought it would be so awful for my sister and I to move. And so we were putting a brave face on it. And obviously it all turned out brilliantly. In the end, the move was fine. But at that point, I was very upset and worried about it. And I was 14 and lots of stuff's going on when you're 14. So I described this experience in The Truth Inside, where I literally woke up in the early hours of the morning one morning and I saw this figure at the end of my bed. And it was my grandfather. And he spoke to me. It's hard to describe. It was almost as if it was through an interpreter. I could hear the voice of this woman in my ear, even though I couldn't see her. And it was as if she was translating what he wanted to say to me. So, and I can clearly remember every little nuance of this. And, I'm 46 now. So this is however many years ago. And this woman was saying, well, he's been very worried about you. You've got a big move coming up. He wants to reassure you that everything is going to be fine. And during the course of this sort of conversation, in perhaps in the loose sense of the word, she also referred to something that had happened to my father, this is my father's father we're talking about. Says my father had a near miss on the motorway about a week before then, where he was describing it to us when he got home and said he really thought he was going to die. It could have been a very serious accident. But some scaffolding poles and a lorry in front of him had basically come towards his windscreen. The lorry in front had braked. My dad had braked suddenly behind him, and he said he was so sure that he was going to die or be seriously injured. He actually just took his hands off the wheel and covered his head, because he thought, oh my God, this is not going to end well. And the poles just came straight for the windscreen. And when he looked up and uncovered his eyes, they just hit the front headlight. And he couldn't work out how. I remember him telling us, like, well, I just don't understand how that happened. They were coming straight for the windscreen. It's almost as if, he said, I think he said something like, it's almost as if somebody just pushed them and they hit the light. And when he was telling me that, this was some weeks previously to this kind of experience I had with my grandfather, I remember I did blurt out, well, that was Granddad. And they all looked at me. Credit to my parents, nobody said, don't be stupid. They just sort of paused the conversation, looked at me, and then carried on talking. So they were always very open about that kind of thing. And in this sort of dream, this woman's voice was saying to me, oh, incidentally, he's saying it was him who helped your father. And the next morning, I had a vivid recollection of everything that had happened. And to this day, I can pretty much remember word for word what happened, which I don't do with my dreams. And I told my best friend, Michelle, about it, because in those days she was incredibly skeptical. And I described to her what had happened. And she sort of said, oh, maybe you should ask your mum about it. So we sat down and we talked to my mum.
Yeah.
And my mum was very close to her father-in-law. And it was a family joke that they used to have loads of big heated discussions about whether there was life after death, because my mum had always been a complete skeptic. And my grandfather had apparently said to her, you wait and see, after I'm gone, I'm going to come back to you and you'll know that it's true. And he actually did. She saw him in our house 2 weeks after he'd passed. And from that point forward, she absolutely believed that there was something else where she never had before, because to her, it's like, okay, he said he was going to do this and now he has. So I'm believing it. So we sat down and talked to my mum, and I found myself saying, do you know what's really strange is that the clothes he was wearing seemed so significant, because it just looked like he had his gardening clothes on or something. And I was 4 when he died, so I don't remember that sort of detail about him, to my knowledge. And my mum said, well, what do you mean? What was he wearing? And I described what he was wearing, and she just went very quiet, and she said, that's exactly what he was wearing when I saw him, like, sort of 10 years ago. So, that seemed quite conclusive to me. And that was really the first experience I ever had. And I unusually for me, I saw him clearly. It was as if my dad had just walked into my room. I couldn't see his face, but I saw an absolute figure. I could tell what he was wearing. I knew it was my grandfather. These days, if I choose to connect with that ability, if I work with mediumship at all, I do predominantly I see. I'm clairvoyant. And the way that I see now is that it's almost as if I have a cinema screen on my forehead. So if I close my eyes momentarily, it's like there's a screen in front of my forehead, or behind it, more accurately, and I can often see images on there. And often it plays out a little bit like a film, or sometimes I have a face that comes in very close from either the left or the right side, and I can see the details of their features and so on. I occasionally hear. And I would say that I do sense, and that's the one I tend to mistrust the most, because, it's quite easy to imagine there's somebody standing behind you. Or sometimes a common one, actually, with people who claim not to be psychic or have those abilities in any way, but a lot of people experience this, is I often think I've caught something out of the corner of my eye. And that happened to me on Christmas Day this year, actually, when I was just coming down in the morning. The kids were up, and I came into the living room and put the Christmas tree lights on. And I just stood there for a moment. And as I turned round, I thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye. And in my mind, I think that was Romy, because obviously she's often predominantly in our minds on Christmas Day. That's what it felt like to me. So a large part of, I think, working with mediumship really is trusting your gut and not doing that thing that we all do, which is to sort of try and tell ourselves, don't be silly. No, it wasn't. It couldn't possibly have been. Sometimes it can be, and if we trust it, that's, if it's helping us in some way, I don't see an issue with that.
Well, one thing I got to say, obviously the listeners won't be able to appreciate this because they can't see what I'm seeing, and there's something tremendously powerful happening in your environment, because the light show going on in your living room right now, I've never seen light anomalies like this. I'm one of the orb skeptics. I've seen some really good examples of them, but the majority, they seem to be explainable. But what I'm seeing in your environment now is incredible. I'll send you the video later.
Okay.
So can you describe the first experience that had you convinced that Romy was communicating with you? What was it that changed? Were you like, okay, now there's definitely something happening?
Yes, I can remember that very clearly, and I've written about this in The Truth Inside. So it was probably around, let me see, she passed in July. This would have been around November, I think, of that year. And we were living in a different house at that point. We were living in a small village in West Sussex, in the house that she had been born in. All my kids have been born at home, which I'm very fortunate to have done. So, and funnily enough, again, this is the living room, exactly where she was born. And this strange thing was happening. My older children at the time were 4 and 5. We hadn't had our youngest son at that point. And our oldest son was rather in the habit of coming downstairs early in the morning. But he was, 4 or 5 years old. So there wasn't an awful lot. He would usually be clashing about, and then one of us would get up and go down to him. So I noticed that when I was coming down in the mornings, our TV was at a really bizarre angle. And so just to kind of paint a picture, we have a rather odd piece of furniture that we put our TV in. I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like it's one of those weird bits of eclectic looking furniture. It's dark wood and it's got like a million different drawers on it. And it looks like a set of steps. It kind of has a higher level and then a middle level, then a low level. And it's kind of convenient to stick a TV on. And we've got one of those TVs that sits on a stand on this piece of furniture, but you can move the screen, so you can sort of swivel the screen. It doesn't go 360, but it probably goes close to 180. And we always had this propped at an angle on this piece of furniture directed towards the sofa, obviously. So I came down one morning and the TV screen was sort of as far as it could be the other way. And the first thing I thought was, quite honestly, for God's sake, it's my husband. He's the big one for gadgets and tech, and I'm not. And he's constantly losing phone chargers, plugging his phone in different places. We drive each other crazy. So I actually thought, he's plugged his phone in at the TV point, like how annoying, because you had to reach all the way down the back of this piece of furniture. It was a really hard to reach plug. I thought, that's what he's done. He's plugged something in down there, and then he's gone to plug it out, and he's just kind of made a mess and moved the TV out of his way. And so I was annoyed, was irritated about it. And carried on with my life for that day. And the next morning, I think I came down before any of the children. I'd come down for a glass of water or something. And obviously the TV had been back in its place. We'd been watching it that evening, wherever we went to bed. We came down the next morning, same thing. TV is, I thought, for goodness sake. And I realised I'd forgotten to mention this to my husband the previous day. And then I thought, well, maybe it's the kids. Again, forgot it, didn't say anything. It happened a third or a fourth day running. I can't remember whether it's a skip today and then happened again. I don't remember, but basically happened 3 or 4 times in very close succession over the course of, let's say, a week. And I just kept forgetting to say anything, as you do. It's just one of those irritating domestic things that happens and you don't think it's of any consequence. And what happened then is I went to a psychic fair, which is something that I used to do a lot with my parents. And when I was a kid, they have an interest in that kind of thing. And they used to kind of take me along. And I loved them. I still love them. The crystals and the tarot cards. And I just love it. It's a lovely thing to go and do on a Sunday afternoon for me. Perhaps that's not normal. So I just, and again, it was a slightly impulsive decision. Remember, we had 2 kids. We were usually doing stuff with the kids in the afternoons on a Sunday. And it was a bit of a wet day. And I just said to my husband, do you know what? There's a psychic fair over in Brighton. I thought I might go. Do you mind? And he said, no problem. I'll watch TV with the kids. You go and have an afternoon. So off I went, got there with a kind of feeling of not really quite sure why I've come here. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll just kind of buy a crystal and go home. So I went in and looked around some stalls. And so obviously then we come to the room where all the psychics and the mediums have their little stalls set up. And I had a wander around them. And unusually for me, because normally when I go to a place like that, I would feel like, I think I'll have a sitting with somebody. But, this was a few months after Romy had died. And quite bizarrely, I didn't really feel any great need to do it. Or maybe, I don't know what it was. I just didn't feel that pull that I usually feel. But even so, I went round, and usually they have a clipboard on the desk with, a list that you can sign up so that if they're doing another sitting, you don't disturb them. Or if they've stepped away, you can just sign your name on the list to say that you'd like to have a sitting at 10, 11 o'clock, whatever. So I was sort of walking around, and most of them were booked up anyway. And I thought, well, fine, I'll just buy my crystal and go. And then my eye was caught by this one particular table. There was nobody sitting at it, and it had the most garish thing I've ever seen in my life on it. It had a plug-in angel lamp about a foot high that was sort of flashing on and off. And I sort of looked at it, I thought, oh, God, like how, ugh, I would never put something, how could she put something like that on her table? Quite judgmental. And I sort of went over to have a better look at it because it was so awful. And then I saw a little note on her desk saying that she was doing a demonstration of mediumship in the main hall and that she'd be back to resume her sittings afterwards. And sort of something in my head thought, oh, if she's doing a demonstration of mediumship, she's probably quite good. And then I looked at her list and she had one slot left, you know, like immediately after she came out of this dem. And before I knew what I was doing, I stuck my name down on that list. And she came out. And it turned out to be, I've written about this, but it turned out to be one of the most remarkable sittings I think I've ever had. She was exceptional. I can't remember all the things that she told me, but quite early on, she said, she could sense the presence of a very young child, a little girl. She asked if it was okay to continue. I said, yes. She said, is this your daughter? And so it went on. And one of the first things she said, after she'd already given me a load of information about my husband, other family members, my godmother, extraordinarily accurate information, she said to me out of the blue, has your TV been moving? Just as a gut reaction, I just said no, because I didn't have that, it just didn't occur to me. I said no, it hasn't. So she paused for a minute. She said, no, are you sure? Has your TV been moving? So I said, oh, well, actually, now you mention it, kind of. I'm not quite sure what you mean, but it just, she said, no, don't tell me anymore. She said, I'm being told that your TV has been repeatedly moving and this is your daughter trying to draw attention to her presence in your house. So, I'm open to this kind of stuff. But even I, at that point, was thinking, all right, come on. She was 4 months old. She can't move a TV, even in the spirit. Yeah. That's ridiculous. And she kind of explained, like, look, you've got to understand that when people pass, they go back to spirit. So you're no longer talking about a 4-month-old baby. You're talking about somebody's soul, their spirit, their essence, and the energy of that being. So I sort of went home not knowing what to do with that information. And she'd been so accurate on so many other things. And I thought, okay, what I've really got to do is just tell my husband, because it's fair to say, he's an open-minded skeptic. We have many comments. He respects my views and my experiences. And I thought, I've got to ask him, because I bet this was him plugging in his phone charger. So I told him what had been said in this sitting, and he was very interested. I then said, look, she mentioned something about the TV moving. And he said, oh, yes, I've noticed that. And I said, what do you mean you've noticed it? Isn't it you? And he said, no, it's been doing it for a week. I thought it was you.
No.
Going on. And I was like, no, hang on a minute. So I then told him what she'd said, and he was like, well, I just don't know what to do with that. And I said, well, I don't know either. It seems like really bizarre. I'm not even sure whether I can believe that. And then we sort of went to, we're like, okay, it's the kids. They're messing about with the TV. And we're trying to come up with ways, well, how can we ask them? They're 4 and 5. Anyone who has kids will know that you've got to choose your words carefully when you're asking kids questions about, have you done this that you're not supposed to do? Because they're going to tell you the answer they think you want to hear. They're not going to give you an honest answer necessarily straight away. So we're like, okay, how do we ask them neutrally? But we didn't need to. And that was actually the real crux for me. We never needed to ask them, because after that conversation, it never happened again. And to me, that was the pinnacle of the whole experience, because I thought, okay, if that had been something else, I'm pretty sure it would have happened again. If it had been the kids or my husband or anything else, surely it would have happened again. And it didn't. And so to me, that was like, you know what, I can take that now. I really think she's right. I think somehow Romy was moving the television. And that was the first of, I would say, several similar situations that, in my mind have convinced me that in some way there was some attempt to communicate there.
We will be right back after these important messages.
I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is the extraordinary travels of a young, alone, and broke psychic in the highly anticipated new book from internationally renowned psychic, medium, medical intuitive, and best-selling author Sherry Dillard. Critics have described I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like as an engrossing memoir, an empowering story of how a broken girl came to accept her psychic gift. A refreshing and fun read, I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is available through Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold.
How far would you go to protect the children in your care? Nyla's Babies is the terrifying, chilling book from Jack Simonson, in which a young nanny battles an ancient demon for the souls of the twin babies in her care. Critics have heralded Nyla's Babies as an impressive and vivid imagined story, compelling and devilishly spooky. Shocking and haunting, Nyla's Babies is available on Amazon, Kindle, or wherever books are sold. Visit cosmicegg-books.com for more on Nyla's Babies.
Sixth Books will take you to other worlds, haunt you, open your mind, and push you far beyond the veil of the unknown. Sixth Books is a leading publisher of books on the body, mind, and spirit, the paranormal, consciousness, ancient wisdom, and the afterlife. Explore today, learn today, open your mind today, read today. Visit sixth-books.com today. The world as you know it is about to change.
Do you wish for more paranormal and spiritual content? The Paranormal Chronicles magazine is a free digital magazine crammed with the very best in paranormal and spiritual articles and features. No sign up, no subscription, just free reading and knowledge for you. Read today at www.theparanormalchronicles.com/magazine.
Hi there, my name is Claire Waters and I would like to invite you on an incredible journey. I have written a book based on my personal experiences called Raising Faith, a true story of raising a child's psychic medium. It's my family's extraordinary experiences with our young daughter's ability to communicate with spirits and the inspirational lessons learned on our journey. Raising Faith is currently available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and wherever books are sold. Join me on this beautiful and incredible adventure. For more information on Raising Faith, visit my website, raisingfaith.co.uk, or my Facebook page, Raising Faith Book. See you there.
The international chart-topping, haunted horror of Haverfordwest has been described as terrifyingly real, a must-read, shocking and chilling brilliance, genuinely worrying, utterly frightening. Don't read before bed. Described as one of the spookiest writers out there, best-selling author G L Davies presents Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest, the true paranormal account that is shocking the world. Dare you enter? Dare you read? Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and wherever books are sold. Pray you never have to live there.
And didn't you have a dream that was very vivid and real as well?
Oh, yes. So that would have been a little later after that experience, I think. So, I woke up one morning and told my husband I had a very vivid dream. And what had happened is, I don't often remember my dreams, but the ones that I had after Romy died, in fact, the one thing that never affected me after Romy died, that everyone assumes will be the case when you're grieving very deeply, is that my sleep wasn't interrupted. I almost felt guilty about it. I had this, a phenomenal night's sleep most nights. And I think my explanation for that is I was just so grief-stricken and so exhausted by my grief, and also to try and keep going for my family, that by the time it got to bedtime, I was so happy to just shut down. It sort of took me out of that reality for a bit. So that's my explanation for why, my sleep wasn't affected in any way, which I'm very grateful for. But I did have a couple of quite odd dreams. And one of them was, in my dream, I felt like I was underwater and I could hear a voice. When you're under the water at a swimming pool and somebody's talking to you and you can hear their voice and it's really muffled and echoey and you make out some words and not others. And I was hearing this voice talking to me, and it was a very familiar voice, but I was under the water. It was a pleasant feeling, but it was confusing because I kind of felt like I wanted to move and I couldn't move. It wasn't a frightening feeling. It was quite calm. And I just wanted to hear what this voice was saying. At some point, more words were breaking through, and I realized, to my huge confusion, it was my own voice I could hear. And when I listened more closely, I recognized that the things that my voice was saying were the things I was saying to Romy as she passed over. So we were very fortunate. We were able to be with her. They switched off life support and so on. And my husband and I were able to be with her, hold her, just as we would normally have done as she passed. And that's the part of the truth inside that I think I found the most difficult to write about for numerous reasons. It felt very sacred. It's something I'd never really spoken out loud or even written down. and it felt like it was the three of us in that room, and I almost wanted to keep it a secret. But in the interests of perhaps helping others, I did write about it in detail, the actual moment of her passing. Something that I did is talk to her. My husband wasn't in a position to do that. He was really distraught at that point. And I remember having this thought of like, I think it's a motherhood thing. I just had this feeling of like, I've got to be immensely strong here and I can fall apart afterwards, but I've got to help her. I've got to help her here. She needs to go somewhere and I have to help her to do what's right for her, and then I can lose it. So, and I was talking to her, and I didn't know what I was saying at the time, but I remember I was talking to her and saying, you know, can you see the light? You've got to go to the light. There's so many people waiting for you. And at the same time, I was saying to Darius, my husband, again, it's quite hard to articulate this because it's completely opposite to what you would expect you would feel in that situation. But it felt like a really jubilant atmosphere in the room. And I remember saying to him, oh, my God, there's all these people, you know, can you feel it? Can you feel it? It's like she's going. It's like there's a party. Can you feel it? And obviously he was just looking at me and saying, well, no. He was in his own place. And I just couldn't believe what I was feeling and what I was sensing. So I was saying to Romy, it's okay, it's going to be fine. We're going to hold your hand. You know, you've just got to go to all these people. They're all waiting for you. They're all our family. And, you know, I had a sense of like my grandparents there and my husband's aunt who passed very recently. And I felt like they're all in the room and they're all waiting to receive her. That's what it felt like. And it felt like it was a real privilege to be there at that point. And this is what I heard this voice saying in my dream. And just as my logical mind in the dream was thinking like, what on earth is going on here? I had this bizarre physical sensation where it felt as if I lifted up out of the water and I just shot upwards at an incredibly vast rate. And there was a blinding light. And I had this, I registered in my consciousness, I had this thought of, oh, this is incredible. I know everything. I know it's I know it. I know it. That's what I remember thinking. I know it. This is amazing. And then our other daughter woke up in another room and cried out for me. And I kind of like just automatically leapt up out of bed, went to see to her, came back into the room, sat down, and then woke my husband up and said, oh my God, I've just had this unbelievable dream. So I tried to describe it to him, and he said, well, what, you know, and I said, I tell you what that was. I was Romy. She was showing me what it was like for her as she passed. And the reason I think that happened is because, funnily enough, 2 or 3 weeks previously to that, I got really bogged down in my grief, and I was really obsessing over whether she was in pain in her last moments. I was really, really upset about it. I didn't think she could have been because, you know, they'd had her on sort of morphine and life support and so on. But I was getting myself really upset about her last moments, and or had she passed earlier in the day before they tried to resuscitate her? Was it in the hospital? Was she there? And I got myself into I got locked in a cycle about it. And I'm absolutely convinced that I was somehow given that experience in a dream by the spirit world, or whoever you want to attribute it to reassure me that the moment of her passing was as jubilant as I had felt it to be when I was in that room. And it feels like a really huge privilege to have been a party to that.
It's heartbreaking, but it's not just the loss, it's how you've described it. And I think that would give a lot of people a lot of hope.
I hope so.
I really hope so. And I hope that you're feeling, you know, that feeling was real. Poor Romy, you know, she didn't get the chance to live on this plane, and that she gets this amazing adventure, this amazing experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the first on this podcast. I've had people make me laugh. I've had people make me angry, but I've never actually had anyone make me cry. So thank you very much. Thank you for that. Thank you. You're amazing. So you then start to find that these experiences were being repeatedly told you by a succession of mediums.
Yes, I did. It is what it says, really. I mean, I started to seek them out a little. I think it's important to note, obviously, I repeat again, I've grown up with these experiences and these ideas, but I'm not somebody who just sucked it up as a given. I have a naturally skeptical part of my mind. I always, even to this day, if I have an experience I think might be something, the first thing I do is question it. Well, hang on, could it be this? Could it be that? Is it me? Am I tired? Is this, because I don't want to lie to myself. It sounds a ridiculous thing to say, but I don't want to tell myself lies. I want to experience my life to the full, no matter what's happened to me, and I don't want to pull the wool over my own eyes, if you like. So when I sought these mediums out, I did want corroboration of what I was experiencing. And of course, I wanted what everybody wants. I wanted to hear from my daughter and my loved ones in the spirit world. And that didn't always happen. But one of the most extraordinary situations in which it did, again, I have written about in The Truth Inside, I went to a local spiritualist church. And for anyone who hasn't had an experience of a spiritualist church, they are not quite like a conventional church. They're often in a small environment that feels a bit like a church hall to me, ironically. There's a congregation of people. You sit on chairs or sometimes on pews. There's a little table at the front that usually has some kind of spiritual icon on it. But I think the main difference is there's an absence of reference to God or Jesus or Christ, but it does not mean that that's not revered, respected. I think the idea is that you're focusing less on a named icon and more on the feelings of love and healing and light. There's a lot of talk about love and light and healing. You send healing thoughts out to people in the world who may need them, for example. So that's kind of the main difference. And then the other obvious difference is that instead of a vicar or a priest standing up and giving a sermon, you have a medium who gives a dem, as they call it in hipster spiritualist circles, a demonstration of mediumship, where they will connect with the spirit world, do their thing, and give messages to people in the audience from their loved ones in spirit. And so I developed, it kind of became quite comforting to me. I would go to my local spiritualist church on a Saturday. I'm not going to say which one it was because some quite comical things happened. It's quite an eclectic people, as is often the case in a lot of these places. And there's some funny things happen. That's a whole other book, I think. So anyway, I went there about a couple of weeks after Romy died. And I have to say, the lady who was giving a demonstration that night, it wasn't that she wasn't good. I just wasn't in the right headspace. I got there. I was surprised at how upset I felt. I didn't really connect with her style of working, let's just say. And I kind of halfway through, I was thinking, please don't come to me. Please don't come to me. And then it sort of that moved into like, I just want to get out of here. I don't want to be here. And I sat it out and I got home and I burst into tears and I said to my husband, that's it. I'm never going back to one of those places again. And my husband's very kind of tolerant, helpful. It's probably why we're still married, and didn't really say very much and just kind of, soothed me and smoothed it over. And that was that. And a couple of weeks later, on a Saturday night, I just blurted out to him, oh, do you mind if I pop over to the spiritualist church tonight? Asking because obviously it meant he had to stay at home with the kids. His rather droll answer was, oh, do you mean the one that you're never going to set foot in ever again? So I said, yes, that one. And he said, no, of course, if that's what you want to do, you go. So I drove off on my own in the car. And that was a silly qualification. I think it wasn't a tractor. I drove on my own off to the spiritualist church. And in the car on the way there, again, I found myself thinking, I don't know why I'm going here. I did say I wasn't going back here again. I didn't have a particularly good experience last time. I didn't feel like it was a place I was supposed to be in. Why am I now in the car driving there? This is ridiculous. And I talked out loud. When Romy was alive, I often had her and the kids in the back of the car in car seats. And often I'd drop the other two off and it's just me and her. And I had this habit of just talking to her. It's probably quite evident now. I quite like talking. I do a lot of it. And I've talked incessantly to all my children to the point they're probably all really sick of it. So I used to talk to Romy a lot. And so there I am in the car on my own on the way to the spiritualist church. And I was just talking out loud to her. And I said, Romy, I know that you're okay. In my heart, I know you're okay. But that's on a spiritual level. And I'm your mummy and I'm still really miss you. And I know this is silly, but I just need to hear it from you. I just need to hear it from you once that you're okay. That's all I need. And then I know it's going to feel a bit easier. And that was that. I got there, I parked, I went in, it was really packed. And the lady doing a demonstration that night was a real contrast to the lady the previous time. She was incredibly lively. She was explaining the way she worked. And I remember that she said, look, I don't have a very conventional way of doing this. I literally just pick a person and fire out information at them. So you've got to be really quick to catch it. If you need to ask me questions afterwards, come and find me at the end of the service. So I was thinking, oh, crikey, this, she's a bit of a firecracker. And I purposefully stood at the back of the hall. I was wearing a locket that my husband bought me after Romy passed, that we'd kept a lock of her hair. So I have a photograph of her and a lock of her hair in this locket. But I wore that all the time at that point. But I had, I guess it was, I think it was, this was summer still, but I had a very lightweight scarf. I had this huge scarf around my neck to hide this locket, and I had it inside my clothing, because even at that point I was thinking, yeah, okay, but I'm not stupid. Don't start the whole, oh, you're wearing a locket around your neck with a photo of your dead loved one in it. I had that level of skepticism. So I hid it. And I stood at the back as well, kind of, again, slightly trying to hide. But I had this moment of clarity where I remember thinking to myself, she's going to come. I'm going to be the third person she comes to. I know she's going to come to me. I'm going to be number 3. And I was. And she started talking very quickly about a child, a baby. I realized she had the right link. And she said, oh, that's right. She said, you wear a locket around your neck. I thought, yeah, okay, but you still could have guessed that. And I've got a scarf on, so maybe you just double bluffed me. But then she said, there's a lock of her hair in it, and I'm being told that you hold this locket in a particular way and you talk to it a lot, which, was slightly random and a bit embarrassing, but I did do that. And she was actually even showing me the way that I used to sort of fiddle with this locket, which was really extraordinary. And anyway, she fired off at another couple of things that were, pretty impressive. But, I was thinking, okay, great, this is why I came, as I've got the connection. And then she said, okay, I'm going to move on, but I'm being told that I have to tell you something really, really important. And it's really important I get the words precisely right. So I thought, okay, I was expecting her to deliver this sort of eulogy and give me a whole load of information about, amazing stuff. And she said, actually, it's only 2 words, but I'm being told it's really important that I say these precise 2 words. And the words are, I'm okay. So I just thought, okay, again, my mind naturally went to, okay, how could, come on, this must be a common thing. Or did I have my phone on? Was she, it's like ridiculous stuff. Like, was my radio picking up and broadcasting stuff? Really, but, it's one of those things I really can't find. If anyone has a potential explanation, I'm very open to listening to it. To me, that was one of the most extraordinary pieces of information I was given, actually. The fact that I had asked Romy to tell me in person that she was okay, and then this complete stranger tells me an hour later those exact words, and tells me that the words are important, the way she says it are important. I find that extraordinary. I really do. I can't rub that one out.
Very little to suggest that there was a work in place. It was cold reading or something you could learn on Facebook or social media or something of that nature. You have kind of touched upon this, right? And there's going to be a lot of people out there. That was a wonderful experience you shared with us. And how can you explain this communication, seeing as she's only a baby when she died? Now, we did talk earlier about the TV and stuff.
Yeah.
But surely people would argue that she couldn't speak in life. This is a great opportunity to explain how it works.
Of course. Well, the first thing I'd say is, obviously I don't know how it works any better than the biggest skeptic in the world. I'm not party to any special knowledge. Even if you say that I have abilities as a medium, I would still argue, yes, I know, but that's just what I think. Yeah. I can prove it. Proof is a dangerous word in this walk of life, because proof and evidence are very hard to provide when you're talking about something that you can't see. And, you can't prove the existence of an afterlife, I would argue, even though I deeply believe there is one, right? But so the best explanation that I can give, based on my personal experience and what I have read over the years, is that we all come to this world. Isn't there that saying, isn't there? I always get the wrong way around. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that's what I feel. We come to this life and we incarnate, if you like, in a human body, and we live out that life as a human being. And my personal theory is that the reason for our being is to learn, and mainly to learn about love and compassion, unconditional love, true unconditional love. And I think that's very hard to come by in this life. So I believe that in essence, we are a soul, a spirit, which, to a lot of people, again, unhelpfully over the years, that's been depicted in literature and art as, some kind of ghoulish apparition, or, more your neck of the woods, the ghost, paranormal, somebody with a sheet over their head. But if you take it down to pardon the pun, but if you take it down to the bare bones, I think that we are an energy. We are an energy. Each individual person is an energy, and I think the more far-sighted among us, the deeply spiritual people, understand that all of those individual energies link up as one whole energy. So that, to explain this, Romy may have been a 4-month-old baby when she passed, but if you accept the idea that she was an energy that went to blend back in with other energies once she passed back to wherever she came from, then that energy does have the ability to move a television or to take part in these phenomena that seem really impossible to us. And if we try and logicalize it, if that's a word, of course it seems impossible. But that's, so and I've also read accounts, which I find fascinating, of people who have had near-death experiences or very experienced mediums who have had this kind of information imparted to them. I have read accounts that suggest that in the afterlife, for want of a better term for it, there is no speech. We don't actually speak out loud to each other, but it's almost like a type of telepathy. Yeah. So words are impressed upon us. And I think working as a medium, I can identify with that, because often I have a similar exchange. If I'm receiving information, sometimes I see it in my mind's eyes if it's been written down on a piece of paper, and sometimes I just have a sense of the word, and that's very difficult to try and articulate, but that's what it feels like. It does feel like we would imagine telepathy to be. And so that is my best explanation for how it's possible for a baby or a young child, or perhaps somebody who was mute in life, or people who spoke different languages in life. I believe that once we go back to source, whatever that source is, heaven, the spirit world, the afterlife, I believe that once we're back at that source, all of those things belong to a human experience, and we return to what was there, which actually, for what it's worth, I believe is incredibly simple. I think that all these things that we're seeking, I think the answers are incredibly simple.
That's a very, very good explanation. And was it logicalized? Logicalized is the word of the day. I'm going to be using it all the time. I love that. Didn't you have a premonition of sorts about your son who was born a year after Romy died?
Yes, I did. So that happened. This is going to make me sound like a sort of woman that I'm really not, but I have to say it because it's true. That happened while I was having a facial. Not something I do very often, honestly. In fact, the reason why I was having this facial is because our children had gone back to school. It was September after Romy had died in July. And I suppose my husband very sensibly sort of gathered that, I didn't have the kids around to distract me. I wasn't able to work at that point. I was kind of kicking around at home. And quite frankly, I'd been crying a lot. And I did feel a bit wrecked. And he said, look, why don't you go down to this nice place in town and have a facial and just sort of have some time to yourself and relax and do something, just sort of distract myself, but in a nice way. And so that's what I did. And it's quite interesting because I quite like facials and massages and so on. And I think that if you like that type of thing, when you have a good therapist working on you, your mind can go to that place. Well, they describe them alpha and beta brainwaves, don't they? Where your sort of alpha brain wave function switches off. So it kind of feels like you're daydreaming, or that little part just before you go to sleep or just when you wake up. That's when they say you are the most receptive to, spiritual activity or whatever, which is interesting because the first experience I ever had, if you recall, was sort of early hours of the morning. I've just woken up. Obviously, my brain was very receptive because that part of your brain, all the inhibitors that say, no, it isn't, that's ridiculous, you're making that up, aren't kind of fully awake yet, or they're going to sleep. So there I was in this sort of quite soporific state, having this facial. There was lovely music playing in the background. And I was just I just had my eyes closed and I wasn't asleep. And I had this image in my mind's eye where I see things when I work mediumistically. And what I saw was a hill in front of me with the greenest grass I think I've ever seen. It just looked amazing. It was like the type of vivid photograph that you want to step into. Which when I was, as an aside, when the publisher were speaking to me about the cover design for The Truth Inside, I was very fortunate in that they listened to my input, because I know that generally as an author, unless you're Stephen King or J.K. Rowling, you don't get zip about your cover design.
Yeah.
But they were kind enough to listen to my input, and I was very strong on the idea that I wanted it to be vivid, because my idea about the afterlife, if one indeed exists, is that everything there is so vivid. It's indescribable. And so I had this hill in front of me with this incredibly vivid green grass, and at the top of this hill there was a tree which I could see in sort of silhouette, and under the tree I could see a small child, a babe, a child the age Romy would have been had she been alive, so sort of like just about walking. Next to her was this woman who I had seen before when I'd worked as a medium and also as a healer. I'm not sure whether I should try and describe her, because it's rather outlandish. I've never worked out. Some people may say she's a spirit guide. I don't know. As I'm talking now, I can see her very vividly in my mind's eye. She's very hard to describe. She's a woman of colour. I can't place her in a time period, but I always see her wearing white clothing, but she's sort of swathed in it. It's very unusual. I have actually tried to do research on the internet, and I feel like she's a midwife, or she would be a midwife in an African country. That's my sense about her, but I've never been able to place her. But I've seen her, in inverted commas, several times when I'm working with healing or as a medium. And this is the lady that I saw standing under this tree. She was holding in her arms a baby. So I was thinking I knew this little child next to her was Romy. And I saw her, and a few days after that, I found out I was carrying our son. So it was a kind of a premonition, if you like. And also I had another odd dream as well around that time, after which I woke up, because my husband and I have been back and forth about, do we want another baby? Is that something we should try? Could we deal with it if something went wrong? Also I was 42 at this point, 41, 42. So it's like, it wasn't a decision we wanted to take lightly. And my husband had sort of been erring on the side of, look, I know this is something that's really important to you, but I'm not really sure I want to go there. I don't think I could cope with it. And I woke up one morning and I said, I had this extraordinary dream. This is separate to the facial experience. I had this extraordinary dream, and I kind of feel like if we want to ask this baby, we're going to have one. And he said, well, that's really weird. I can't remember my dream, but you just said that to me, and I must have had the same dream. I've woken up thinking we need to have a baby. And weeks later I was pregnant, and now 4. So
speaking of premonitions, did your older daughter say something very eerie about her sister?
Yes, she did. That's it was one of the first things that came into my mind after Romy died, and it spooked me for a long time, actually. So my other daughter, Layla, who's now 9, is very sensitive, and we've had lots of different conversations. I'm sure that she has some kind of tuning in ability. Lots of the things she said to me, especially as a young child, were very prescient. And there was one particular occasion, Romy was a baby, obviously. She was maybe a couple of months old, and I was bathing the other 2 kids with her on my lap. And we were talking about what we were going to do in the summer holidays. It was the beginning of the summer, and we always have this tradition in our family where we make a big list of all the stuff everyone wants to do, and then everyone gets to pick one thing a week. That's how we handle can I go here? Can we do this? Can we do that? Everyone gets to pick one kind of outing or experience per week. And so we were talking about that, and one of my older son's favourite things to do at that time was to go to a local outdoor swimming pool. He'd loved that. We'd done it the previous year. And so he said, well, can we go and do that? And I said, well, we can, but this year we'll have to ask, your auntie to come with us, because obviously Romy's a tiny baby and I can't take all 3 of you on my own. So we can do it, but we need to arrange somebody to come with us. So then Layla said to me, Mummy, when Romy goes back, will we be able to go swimming with you just by ourselves again? So I said, sorry, what do you mean? And I must admit, at that point, when she's just said that, I did have a slight sort of chill go down my spine. So I thought, my God, sorry, what? I said, sorry, what do you mean? And she said, well, when Romy goes back, she just repeated it. She said, well, when Romy goes back, will me and Casper just be able to come swimming with you on our own again? Because there'll only be 2 of us. So I said, well, what do you mean when she goes back? Where do you think she's going to go? And she sort of looked at me, and we locked eyes for a minute. And she just, I can only describe it. She had this look on her face like she knew she'd said something she wasn't supposed to say. And she just looked at me really directly, and she said, she's going back, Mummy. And I said, so I kind of laughed it off and said, well, where? So then she looked really shifty and said, back in your tummy? So I thought, okay, bit of sibling rivalry. She's probably half wishing that she would go back in my tummy. Layla was the only girl. She was the baby. And now she isn't. So that's what this is about. But I'll tell you, right after Romy died, one of the first things I thought about was that conversation. And I can't describe to you how, but I know that she knew. I know that she knew. It was the way she looked at me. And, hindsight's a great thing. But in retrospect, I think that was very clear to her.
Was that frightening or upsetting to you?
It was. When she first said it, I thought, oh, my God, like, what is she saying? But then when she kind of gave me this trite explanation, which was obviously like, oh, whoops, what have I said? Yeah, I think she's going to go back in your tummy. It lulled me into a full sense of security, I suppose. I thought, oh, she's just kind of a bit jealous and she's kind of wishing her baby sister wasn't really here. And that's where this has come from. She was 4 years old. So, there is a lot of that type of conversation when kids are that age, because they're seeing the world in a different way and you're trying to understand what they mean some of the time. So, once she sort of, quote, explained herself, I relaxed. I thought, oh, OK, that's fine. But then, of course, afterwards, when what happened, I did think, oh, my goodness, she knew. She absolutely knew. I know she knew from it's just the way she looked at me. That's all I can say.
Has she said anything since, or was that a one-off experience?
Yes, about her sister. She then didn't speak about her sister for years, wouldn't utter her name, wouldn't say anything. And a year ago, we moved her to a new school and she made some close friendships with my girls. And actually, simultaneously, a very close friend of mine from university, his wife passed. I happened to be godmother to their daughter, who's 7. And so my friend's daughter and Layla developed this extraordinary relationship. They'd really never really met each other over the years. We'd met up a few times, but they hadn't really made an impression on each other. And they are extraordinarily close. It's very odd. I guess they bonded through their deep and unusual loss that perhaps other children don't really understand or appreciate. But yes, there have been many occasions with Layla in the time since she started talking about Romy then more. And then the other really odd thing that happened is our youngest son started nursery school. And, Romy's a fairly unusual name, right? Well, I thought it was when I picked it. He starts nursery school. There are 2 kids called Romy in his class, which is I find that quite weird. I find that really weird. Because
I'd never heard of the name before. I had to write it down how you were saying it, because I've not heard that. I've heard of Romi.
Yes, yes. Well, the addendum to the thing about the Romys at nursery school is that actually what I do write about it in The Truth Inside, actually. When I was pregnant with Romy, I wanted her name to be Romany. I have a fascination with Romany gypsies. I love reading about their culture. I have had a lifelong love affair with tarot cards. So I just loved this name. And I hadn't really heard it. And, you try and look it up. You don't get many descriptions of it. But I just thought, no, that is a name. And I want to call her that name. And my husband wasn't overly keen on Romany. And I said, but if it's Romany, we'd just shorten it to Romy. And he said, well, Romy I like. So we went with Romy. And one of the Romys at my son's nursery school, I got chatting to his mother, and she knows our story. And, we were saying how extraordinary it was that her daughter's also called Romy. And she's 5, so she's a year younger than the age Romy would be coming up to. And she said, well, actually, her real name is Romany, but we just call her Romy for short. I just thought, oh, my God, that's really quite odd to me. If she'd been called, I don't know, Anne or Lucy or something less odd, but a name like that, I find that situation quite strange. But I could, I think I've written about a couple of other incidents with Layla in The Truth Inside. There have been a few. She's very sensitive.
So how did The Truth Inside come to be published? What made you decide was it just a cathartic experience where I'm going to write it, or was it, I can help people with this?
Yeah, straight cathartic is what I get asked a lot. And honestly, that was the smallest part of it. The biggest part was that I promised Romy. We were in ICU all night. I guess I knew what was coming, really. I was in denial about it, but I knew. And I remember I talked to her a lot. She was unconscious, but I was hoping she could hear me. And one of the things that I said to her was that, I want everyone to know your name. I want your energy here to be powerful in a positive way, and I'm going to write it down. I'm going to write about you so everyone knows about you. That was what I felt, and that's what I told her. So that was the main driver for me. I was compelled to write this book because I'd made one of my children a promise, and I really don't like to Welsh on a promise to anyone, particularly not to my kids. And I started out actually writing a blog, which is still in the public domain, but I don't really write for that blog anymore. It was the blog was called Remembering Romy, and that was cathartic. That's what started me on that helped me with my grief. I wrote about the day-to-day experiences I had. Sometimes it was a way for me to, in a very British and polite way, sort of vent some of my frustrations about being a newly bereaved parent, some of the things that people were saying or doing that perhaps weren't helpful, just kind of gently let them know. And to let some people around me know what was going on with me, because I became a bit of a recluse directly afterwards. I didn't really want to see anyone or do anything. I was just struggling to get through my life, really. So the blog was cathartic. The book, I can only say that I knew I was going to write it, and I'm quite a determined person. And if I set my mind to something and I believe in it that much, nothing can stop me from doing it. I have quite a strong energy in that way. But I do feel like there were a series of sort of little nudges that pushed me into getting it written. The first one of which was that I was reading something online one night and about writing or writing a book. I don't know. You know what happens? You go online and then you click one thread and another thread, and before you know it, you're reading about how to grow turnips or something bizarre. It was a bit like that, except I stayed in context and I was trying to read about writing. And I ended up reading some very bizarre strand, and somebody mentioned the Hay House Writers' Workshop, and I thought, what's that? I knew Hay House were a big publisher who published lots of spiritual titles, so I sort of clicked on the link, and it said, Hay House are big spiritual publishers, and once a year they run a writers' workshop. You pay to attend this workshop, and then everyone who's attended has the opportunity to submit a manuscript or a proposal for a book, and they pick a winner, and that book gets published. And so I thought, but they're American. That's all going to be in America, isn't it? I can't get to America and go to a writer's workshop. So I did some more clicking, and then I was like, no, they're in the UK as well. They have these writers' workshops in the UK. Did some more clicking, and wouldn't you know it, I think it was a Wednesday or a Thursday. Let's say it was the middle of the week. Clicked on it. The Hay House Writers' Workshop for that year was that weekend in London. And so my husband is amazing like this. I phoned him at work and said, and bearing in mind, our son was at this point about a year old. I was still breastfeeding, so I wasn't really going out much. I'd never left him for a whole day. So I phoned my husband at work and I said, can I go to this writer's workshop in London at the weekend? And he said, okay. And I said, yeah, but it's a couple £100. And he said, that's all right. We'll find it. I think you should go. And he said, well, just out of interest, why do you think you should go? And I said, I don't know. I don't have an expert. I just feel like I need to go. And he said, well, that's good. Go. So that was that conversation. And so I went. And I sat there. 5 minutes in, there was a big talk from Michelle Pilley, who's the director of Hay House in the UK. And I texted my husband at that point. I think we were 10 minutes in, and my text was uncharacteristically pessimistic. And it said something like, I don't know what on earth I'm doing here. Everyone else here is a writer. I'm completely out of place. What the hell was that? Why did you let me do this? Why am I, I've got to sit here for 2 days now, and I'm a complete fraud. And his reply came back, you're in the right place, stay in your seat. So I obviously did, because it would have been quite embarrassing to get up and leave several hundred people. And just as that happened, a massive picture of Gordon Smith, the medium Gordon Smith, came up on the screen behind Michelle. And she began talking about how he was the first person she ever signed to write a book at Hay House. And I thought, that's weird. Gordon Smith was a bit of an idol of mine. I knew that he was a medium who never charged for a sitting. I admired him for that. I knew he was a medium who worked with bereaved parents a lot. I'd seen documentaries on him. And that kind of somehow kept me in my seat. And I just thought, that's quite odd, because Michelle hadn't been talking about mediumship or anything like that. And then up it came just as I was doubting myself. So I took it as a bit of a sign. And in fact, fast forwarding, when I was writing the book, I was saying to you earlier, Gavin, that, I said to my husband, I want Gordon Smith to endorse my book.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how that was going to happen. I had no contacts with him, but I made that happen. It's another story. I basically made that happen by stalking him, but we'll won't go into that now. But he was very, very generous and kind enough to give me a wonderful endorsement, which is on the front of my book. So that kind of ties that story up nicely. And yeah, lots of it. And so I entered the competition, is the other wind up to this story. And I did, guess what? I didn't win it. And it was really weird because I wrote this first sort of 3 chapters. I was breastfeeding a 1-year-old. It's like I didn't know what I was doing. I was sleep deprived. I was like sort of like clattering through this book for about an hour a day, trying to write as much as possible to enter this competition. I think I needed to do a proposal and 3 chapters, I think. So I was like really working hard on this thing. And all along, I was telling myself, okay, it's a sign. I'm going to win it. I'm going to win. I know I'm going to win this. My book's going to win this publishing competition, and it's going to get published. And I didn't win. And I remember the day that they announced the results, I was driving to pick up my kids from school, and I had to pull over the car and burst into tears as I was so distraught. And I remember thinking, my God, I'm supposed to be psychic. Like, how could I have got this wrong? And one of my dearest friends, Michelle, said to me, do you know what? This is probably not the right publisher for you. I've got a feeling in my gut your book's going to be published, but it's not through them. It's not right for you. They're too much of a big machine, and that's not you. So I thought, oh, whatever. And actually what happened is that I then made a connection with a lady called Teresa Chung, who some of your listeners may know of. She's a prolific author in the mind, body, spirit genre. She's written, I think, 37 or 38 titles. She's a Sunday Times bestseller. I'd read lots of her books, and about 2 weeks after Romy died, I was looking through my bookshelf for something else. And I'm not joking, a book fell out of the bookshelf and landed on my foot. And it was the title of the book, I think, was Angel Babies by Teresa Chung. And I picked up this book and I thought, well, I didn't even know I had that book. I'd obviously bought it, ages ago, shoved it in the bookshelf and never read it. So I thought it was quite odd, given what had just happened to me, that had hit me on the foot. So I read it. I did something I'd never done in my life before. I emailed her. There was an email address for her in the book, and I sent this email that said, please don't feel the need to reply to this. I've never done this before. I really feel compelled to write to you because my daughter's recently passed, and I've read your book, and I really want you to know how helpful it was to me. It really has sort of reinforced my faith in the spirit world, which I'd kind of lost a bit. And I just want you to know that. And she did email me back, and I began writing my blog at this point, and I think there was a link to my blog on my email. And she sent me a lovely email, so sorry about the loss of your daughter, blah, blah, blah. She said, incidentally, I've been reading your blog, and you write really well. And if you ever think about writing a book, could you please contact me, because I do everything in my power to help you. And who says that, right? Yeah. Not British people, that's not very British. And to this day, I have never met Teresa Chung, but we now are really quite good friends. We've emailed each other, and she has been an incredible mentor to me. She helped me a lot, and basically helped me to see that preparing my book for that competition meant that by the time I discovered John Hunt Publishing, I had a pretty good book proposal and 3 chapters ready to go. I just sent them. And John Hunt Publishing very kindly said, yes, we'd like to publish your book. So, yeah, I just feel like there was kind of a particular route there that I was being directed to follow. And that the book really physically came to be through a series of, coincidences, maybe, I don't know, or a bit of guidance, maybe.
I think it's a little bit of both. I'm delighted that your book was published. However you got there, whatever the journey was, the destination was worth it. So what do you hope the truth inside will offer the world?
Well, above all, I think I hope it will offer hope to the bereaved. I've obviously, all through my, everyone loses people all the time. This is part of life. Particularly since Romy died, I've come across people who have lost children also. My own aunt, in fact, lost her firstborn when I was 6 years old, and very bizarrely, almost the same age to the day that Romy was. She's been an immense support to me. And I've met people in various stages of grief and bereavement, online, offline, in person. And some of them, it's heartbreaking to me how much some of these people still suffer years and years later. It's like they become entrenched in their grief and they cannot step out of it. And I really hope that this book will offer a message that it is possible to step out of your grief. I carry it with me all the time, don't get me wrong, but look at me, listen to me. I'm sitting here. I am, I think, a pretty positive, optimistic person. I've retained that as part of myself, and I have a belief in living my life to the full, even though I've buried one of my children. And, you know, I could very easily have become the person whose life was never the same again and who fell apart because their child died. And I don't believe in that. That's what I want to say. I don't believe in that. And I really hope that this book will offer perhaps people who feel skeptical or unsure, I hope it will offer them a suggestion that there might be something more, just really for people to perhaps feel comfortable in opening their minds. I don't want to convince anybody. That doesn't work. Just saying, look, this happened to me, so therefore you've got to believe it, is not going to work for anyone. But yeah, I think that's it. I think offering people a perspective and perhaps some hope if they're in a dark place, because I've certainly been in that place. And you know, you wouldn't want to hope it. You wouldn't want anyone to be in that place either.
From a personal point of view, the truth inside, it can help anyone who has lost someone, whether it's a child or just someone in their life. You don't have to be a paranormal enthusiast or a spiritual enthusiast. It is about your journey and how you've coped. Anyone who tuned into the show, they're probably thinking, oh gosh, this is going to be a tough show. This is going to be a hard show to listen to, right? But your abundance of energy, your positivity, your love of life, your ability to strive, to push, to want, to need, you kept living.
Yeah.
And you kept living for your children and for the memory of Romy. Yeah. And that is the message I've taken from this book. Whether you have lost someone or not, the book is important. The truth inside is important, because we were talking before we began the interview. Life is just alone. Everything in it is not ours to keep. Your pets, your loved ones, your friends, your colleagues, it is not ours to keep. It goes. It ends up leaving us, okay?
Absolutely.
And this book is important for anybody. We were talking again earlier that nothing can prepare you. It doesn't matter how much you value and appreciate anything. It can't really prepare you. But this book, whether you've lost someone, whether you've got someone who's ill at home, someone who's dying, or you're just worried about your family, this book can just give you the hope that, do you know what? Maybe everything is okay. Maybe this part of our life is just a transition into a bigger, better existence. Yes. Without the constraints of a human body, without the constraints of mental health and physical issues and letdowns and emotional distress. We go to somewhere better. And this is the first time, I know you're talking about trees of chunk, but this is the first time I've heard of such an example. I've never thought about it. I've talked about animal spirits. I've talked about Bigfoot. I've talked about all these different things, but it never dawned to me. It's like when I read this book, when I read The Truth Inside, it's like, oh my gosh, why haven't I thought about this before? So how has writing The Truth Inside, the wonderful book that is The Truth Inside, how has that helped you personally?
We'll cover off the first cliche and say that it was cathartic. It was cathartic in some ways, but I think I got over the cathartic bit by writing the blog, if that's the right turn of phrase, really. It wasn't that. I think it succeeded for me where all else failed, is what I want to say, because I'm not knocking counselling. I've had lots of counselling at various different points in my life. I've suffered from depression. I still live with depression, particularly given what's happened. You know, it doesn't appear that way, but you know, it happens. And so I'm very alive to that. And I think I had I had so much counselling. I think I had counselling fatigue after Romy died. And you know, people don't know. Even experienced counsellors sometimes don't know how to handle the death of a child. And my problem with that counselling, and it was my problem, was that I could not go to that counselling without feeling compulsion to say to the counsellor, well, do you have children? Has one of them died? I couldn't, and this is not like me normally. Normally, I'm completely open to discussing an issue with somebody who may not have an experience of it because they bring a perspective to it that might be helpful, but I just couldn't get past that block. Perhaps I wasn't ready at that point, or I wasn't in the right frame of mind. I don't know. So I turned to writing, because it's something that has always been very comfortable for me. I love to do it. I don't care what I write. I could write the phone book or something. I love the process of writing. I like what it helps me to achieve mentally and emotionally. And I think so it succeeded where all else failed. And it gave me great hope. And it also gave me purpose outside of my children. After Romy died, you know, that my one remaining purpose in life was really my kids. But it did sometimes feel like I was dragging myself through each day just to try and exist for them and not be a shoddy mother. And it gave me a real purpose. And I started to see that because of Romy's death, I was being offered an opportunity to do something that I dreamed of all my life. And that switched something on in me, and I started to think, right, hang on a minute, you know, it's a cliche, but worse things have happened to people. You know, people are alive right now in war zones. Their children are being blown to pieces. They've lost more than one child. You know, they've been in unimaginable situations. I can't even go there in my head. So I was like, hang on, yes, I've lost my child, but I'm sitting here and I have an opportunity to do something that has been a lifelong dream. How privileged is that? So that it kind of put me into a really positive mindset, which is my natural setting. But I had obviously lost that in the months after her death. So, and I think the fact that a series of events that I've just described led me to that book being offered a publishing contract with relative ease, you know, because the other thing happens, you write a book and you think, oh my God, you know, now I have to get it published. That's really difficult. Everyone says how difficult that is. And for me, it wasn't. You know, was I lucky? I don't know. Was this book meant to be brought into being? Maybe. I just felt like I had a strong feeling that it was this book, The Truth Inside, is somehow meant to be here in the same way that Romy was meant to be here, even for a short time. So yeah, it gave me a purpose. It gave me a real sense of purpose, and it reconnected me really with how privileged I am to be living my life. Our life is not somebody else's life, even your child's life. Even if you've grown that child inside you, I still have my life to lead. And so that's what it gave me.
Ali, you're an incredible woman. I mean that genuinely. What an incredible woman you are. What would you say to those who may be skeptical of your beliefs?
I'd say that's fine. It in the nicest possible way. It really doesn't bother me in any way at all. You know, I have many close friends of all different religious persuasions and of none, and I don't judge anybody by what they believe. And I would say that none of us can prove that anything does or doesn't exist. And I'm not putting myself out there as a person who can offer anyone any proof or any evidence. Those to me are very dangerous words to be using when we're talking about the subject matter, because you look at the definition of those words and then you try and come up with proof or evidence that, there is an afterlife. I'm not quite sure how we're going to get to proving that. I really respect the people who are striving to come up with different artifacts to show those possibilities. So I can't prove the existence of an afterlife any more than the next person can prove that it doesn't exist, or that the other person can prove that there isn't or isn't a God. And I'm not really interested in proving anything. I suppose that's also the message I give somebody who's skeptical. I would be saying, well, I've got nothing to prove. I wrote this book because I promised my daughter I would write it. It's her legacy. Despite its title, at no point in The Truth Inside do I declare that this is the truth. That's not what I'm trying to do. Or in fact that people need to believe what I believe. I hope that that's not what I've got across. That certainly wasn't my intention. I welcome any theories about the experiences I've had. But at the end of the day, what I've written about is exactly that. It's my own personal experiences, which I have furnished with my own beliefs, and I invite people to simply read and to think. I think that's what I want to say. And if it helps one person to go through a fraction of the pain that I've experienced, then I'm very happy, and that validates my daughter's existence for me in a rather strange way, hard to explain way.
How can we find out more about you, your projects, and the book?
So I have a website, which is alinorell.com. That's 1 R and 2 L's in Norell. And I also have a Facebook page, but I also have an author Facebook page. So that's Ali Norell Author on Facebook. They're probably the two main ways to contact me at the moment. I do my best to reply to people on Facebook. I have had messages through there from obviously other people who have lost children. So it's comforting to me that they've sort of found a base to connect. Those are the two main ways at the moment, although I know I should probably be much better at getting myself out there. That's coming.
That will come in time. And also, for more information on The Truth Inside, you can also go to www.o-books.com and search for The Truth Inside. It's got a lot of information there on Ali, and that is alinorell.com. That's Ali Norell, which is Norell.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
I spelt it the other way around. So just to confirm, it's alinorell.com, ALINORELL.com. Get in touch with Ali. You've heard her speak for over an hour. What an engaging, positive, energetic woman she is. Keep in touch with her. Find out what she's doing next. Imagine what her next project's going to be. It's going to be absolutely incredible. Now, what we like to do at the end of the show, we like to leave our listeners with something a little special. So could you leave our listeners with a final thought.
Yes, my final thought would be simply make it count. That's what has got me through a lot, actually. Make it count. You know, remember, this is your life. It's not your loved one's life. However painful it is continuing to exist without them. If I believe what I've written about, which is we're here to learn, then learn as much as you can. Make it count, because it can only enrich your life.
An incredible message. Thank you, Ali. Everyone, that's Ali Norell, the author of The Truth Inside. You can find out more information at alinorell.com. Ali, thank you. What an incredible woman. What an incredible start to the new year. Getting to interview you. Thank you so much for your precious time. Thank you. There we go.
That was amazing.
There we have it. What a heartbreaking interview. Ali's experience really put my life into perspective. Did this offer you hope, or did it just open up a rabbit hole? What do you think? Ali Norell's energy and passion is so infectious. Despite everything she's gone through, she's dedicated her and Romy's life pursuing a productive and loving life. She is a kind, brave, strong and positive mum, wife, and a fantastic author. She's a beacon of love and light for all of those that are lost in the abyss of grief and despair. Read The Truth Inside today from wherever books are sold, or visit www.o-books.com and get your copy. If you know of someone struggling with grief and loss, then maybe get them a copy too. It really helps so much. I think we're going to be hearing a lot more from Ali Norell. This may have been her first interview, but it certainly won't be her last. For more on Ali and The Truth Inside, visit www.alinorell.com. That's ALINORELL.com. Say hello to her. If you are looking to write to explore your dream of becoming an author, then visit John Hunt Publishing accepts unsolicited manuscripts and has 13 imprints covering everything from spirituality, history, politics, paganism, the paranormal, horror, science fiction, to all manner of non-fiction books. So make your writing dream a reality today and visit johnhuntpublishing.com. If you want more free paranormal content, then read the Paranormal Chronicles free digital magazine. The free digital magazine is jam-packed with articles on all things paranormal. So read yours right now at www.theparanormalchronicles.com/magazine. It's free, no sign up, no nonsense, just free reading for you at www.theparanormalchronicles.com/magazine. Remember to follow this podcast series for your chance to win a free paranormal book every month, an Amazon gift voucher every quarter in our followers giveaway, and also so you never miss an episode. Explore our archives, download, listen, tell your friends and explore all our great content, if you dare. Let me leave you with this. Grief, loss and depression affect so many of us on a daily basis. I know this. I suffer with suicidal depression every day, but please know your life is important. There are people out there that care. There are people at the end of a phone, an email, a text message. There are amazing people that can give you support and they will listen. You are never alone. Your life matters and you are important. Your life is important and you make a difference to this world. Please know this. You are listening to the Paranormal Chronicles podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I am G L Davies. Sleep well.